Kenya is more than a year away from the next general elections, but with President Uhuru Kenyatta due to retire, those angling to succeed him have gone all out to woo the Kenyan voters.
It is as if we are back to the campaign trail, heading to 2022.
In true Kenyan political fashion, allegiances and alliances have shifted. Once sworn political enemies, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga now walk hand in hand, call each other brother, and Kenyatta has increasingly isolated his deputy in favor of Odinga and his opposition colleagues.
Because we've seen a great fallout between the president and his deputy. We've seen cases where the president is holding cabinet meetings and you don't find the deputy president in those cabinet meetings. As
part of a deal reached during their political truce in March 2018, the two principals agreed to build bridges among Kenyans. The blueprint of that now seems an inevitable review of the 2010 Constitution.
We refuse to allow our diversity to kill our nation. We refuse to be the leaders under whose watch Kenya's lead into a failed nation.
That starting today, we will begin a process of bringing our people together. That we will begin a process of discussing what ails us and what creates division amongst us.
That seems to have unsettled Deputy President William Ruto, who sees it as a way of edging him out of the succession race.
There are people who are plotting to remove me from the Jubilee Party and the government, and I am asking, where were they when we campaigned for votes with Uhuru Kenyatta?
Kenyatta, who is keen on implementing his campaign pledges, dubbed the Big Four agenda to tackle food insecurity, affordable housing, manufacturing and affordable healthcare for all, is not happy that his deputy now spends much of his time on early campaigns. And most recently, in Kenyatta's words, Ruto is undermining the government.
On one hand, you criticize the government, saying it is bad, and on the other, you take credit for its successes. If you want the goodness or successes of this government, stay with it. If not, leave. Let the rest of us continue.
Kama unataka uzuri wake, kae naye.
Ruto is however standing his ground, choosing the same forum, a political rally, to respond to his boss.
There is no contest between me and my boss, the President of Kenya. And I have not countermanded any decision. And I will continue to work as Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya because that is my place in the Constitution.
As per the current constitution, the president cannot fire his deputy. He would have to go through the National Assembly and the Senate to have him impeached. Kenyatta does not seem keen on taking that route.
Is an elected deputy president, is not an appointed vice president. For that reason, he's guarded by the constitution for that matter. And as a result, it is very difficult, unless there's a constitution, unless parliament gets into it, and unless there's an impeachment of the office and the person holding the office of the deputy president, it's very difficult for you to say, I've fired you and go home.
With a referendum on the review of the Constitution now set for later this year, a politically fatigued citizenry is watching from the sidelines, hoping the fallout between Kenyatta and Ruto, both seen as their tribe's kingpins, does not see a repeat of the 2007-2008 political violence. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.
And to make sense of what's happening in Kenya, we are now joined by political analysts Patrick Kathara and Michael Agwanda in Kenya. And also a bit later on, we will be joined by our correspondent, Sarah Kamani, as soon as we're able to establish that line to her. But let me welcome my guest this evening. Thank you so much for making time for us. Let's start off with you, Patrick. What do you make of where the country finds itself at the moment, looking at the dispute between the deputy president as well as the president of the country?
Thanks for having me. I think that this was kind of anticipated. As we probably if you look back to 2013, 2012, when they got together, theirs was a marriage of convenience. It was all about the charges that they faced at the International Criminal Court and sort of forging a common alliance against that. And they did win against all expectations. They did win the presidency, and used it quite effectively to stall the cases, to clear them themselves off, and to get the cases basically stopped. Although they weren't exonerated, the cases were suspended. So following that, then what was the rationale for the union? And I think that's when things started to go awry for them. What does it mean for Kenyans? I think it's just back to this, what we might call the status quo ante. This wasn't ever a marriage that was expected to last. It had an end date, and I think that's what we're approaching. And I think we'll just go back to the usual slightly antagonistic, very cynical politics, very transactional ones. I, for one, don't expect that it will necessarily lead to violence on the scale of what happened in 2007, 2008. But it's good to remember that all elections in Kenya are associated with some form of political violence. Yeah. So there will be some violence, but it wouldn't be, I think, as bad as it was 10 years ago.
Okay, Michael, your assessment of what Patrick calls a political marriage of convenience. But if you look back at the 2013 campaign as well as the 2017 campaign, there seemed to have been quite a bond that existed there. And in the clip that we played a bit earlier on as well, we had the Deputy President William Ruto asked that, where were these people when we were campaigning, those who want me now out of the Jubilee Party and want me out of the government?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think if I want to, I want to respond specifically on the statement of the Deputy President saying that where were these people when we were campaigning in court? I can say that for a very long time, the Deputy President has been looking outside and complaining about outsiders instead of focusing on his boss that he was having a severed relationship already with. It was his boss, and it was his political party, and it was the government, and that is the Jubilee Party. I, for a very long time, said the Deputy President is attacking people outside. It's not possible for somebody to come into your house and start, rearranging stuff without you accepting and without you giving them the leeway to do that. When Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, who was in the opposition and the leader of the opposition, decided to have a handshake with the president, and that's the 28th March 2018, it was a relationship or a friendship that culminated into a lot of discussion prior to that handshake. And therefore, for the Deputy President to say, where were these people? In other words, what he was actually saying is, I really don't know where they're from, but they're invading in my space. But what they did, he did not realize is that very space was not necessarily his space, but that was the space of the President of the Republic of Kenya. And for that reason, he could not actually play foul unless he was accusing his boss of not giving him an opportunity or briefing him accordingly in this relationship that he had started with an opposition leader. Take that home. But then on the other hand, when we look at all the campaigns that have been taking place here in 2007, in 2013, and also in 2017, we know that there have been alliances. We know that there have been cooperation of different parties coming together. Some parties are worn out and new parties created. We know that that might also be a possibility in the 2022 general election. We've seen Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, who is a very senior politician in this country. We've seen Musalia Mudavadi. We've seen Gideon Moi joining hands and saying we can form an alliance here. The fundamental question question that everybody is asking is, where is Honorable Raila Odinga going to be? Is he going to be with President Uhuru Kenyatta, or is he going to form his own alliance? I can tell you for free that today, if election will be called and all the gentlemen decide to go into the arena, political arena, and specifically running for president of this republic, it will be very, very difficult to amount the support and the voting bloc that will be required for them to amount to a presidency unless they come into alliance, just like what they've begun. But we've seen in the past Honorable Raila Odinga getting votes literally without even having all these alliances. So it is also possible. But I want to say this. I don't want to take much away from them. I just want to say that I haven't seen them mount a presidential campaign that can drive them to win the presidency of the Republic of Kenya. Because most cases, if you look at Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, he's just been campaigning in western part of Kenya that is from. Yeah. If you look at Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, he's been in eastern, and he's not gone beyond the other places that perhaps you will be required to. The Constitution requires that for you to be president of this country, at least you need to have 50+1 of the votes, but besides that, you should also be able to win in 25 different counties in this country. The question is, these people that want to be the president, do they have any influence in 25 different counties, and are they able to amount to 50+1 to become the president of this country?
Just quickly then, Michael, looking at the number of counties that have supported now the Building the Bridge initiative, which has been dubbed the Building a Bridge initiative, can't that then be used as a proxy, as an indicator that just perhaps those who are proposing that there be this amendment to the Constitution would be successful should they establish that alliance in 2022?
Previously, we know that when Honorable Raila was having Orange and, he was, the proponent of the new Constitution, 2010 Constitution, when they won the referendum, definitely they made that a political party and they went with it to a general election and they did fairly good, really, really, really good. The numbers were, astounding, and he was, everybody knew he was going to be the president. Things happened and he was not the president. I do not think that might happen with the 2022 election and with the referendum that is coming. If we look at the numbers of the counties, about 38 counties in Kenya out of 47 have said yes to the referendum that is coming. I cannot for sure say that if you join the team that were proponents of the referendum, then you can win. The reason why I say that is the referendum this time round might not have been a popular, by popular majority, as we may want to put it, but it came with a lot of goodies, both for the county assembly members that were promised, a grant of 2 million Kenyan shillings to buy vehicles, a grant, not a loan at all. I grant you given to it, and that's it. And then there were also resources that were supposed to be put, they were increasing the amount that is supposed to be, wired to the counties from 15% to 18% to about 35%. When the counties realized that they would get more money from the central government into the counties, then they had no option but to vote for that more money to come in. Even though they might not like so many other clauses in this referendum, but the aspect of making sure the central government is going to release more money to them, almost twice the amount of money they've been receiving, is one that has made them unanimously vote for this referendum.
Patrick, is there a possibility at all of William Ruto going at it alone? Earlier on in the clip that we played, the president of the country said that, hey, listen, if you're not happy with the government, leave the government. However, though, William Ruto has not come out publicly to state that he will be going at it alone. What he has continuously said, though, is that I have a boss and I will support my boss, but he hasn't indicated whether he supports this particular process.
Well, I think the the expectation is that he will see out his term as deputy president. So basically, Kenyatta is stuck with him till the elections, till 2022. In terms of whether you're asking whether he's going to run alone, I mean, I don't think so. I think the other speaker is completely right that in Kenya you win through alliances, and he's got to form his own formidable alliance. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that many of these alliances really crystallize very, very close to the elections.
Yeah.
So right now, Kenyatta and Odinga might be buddies, but that is no guarantee that in a year's time they're still going to be together, and that Odinga can rely on Kenyatta's support. I think the way things move in Kenyan politics tends to be, it's very, very close to the elections when candidates are decided, when coalitions are formed, and such. So all the shenanigans for now, I think, are not going to, are really not reliable in terms of predicting who's going to be on which ticket or in which alliance in a year's time. But that said, I think it's really important to mention that these political fights that we are seeing have very little to do with what's actually in the interests of Kenya as a country and in the interests of Kenyans themselves. It's very much about what the politicians want and what the politicians get. And it's a really, really sad thing, because these are public resources that are being corruptly utilized by government, to support a referendum when the courts are actually having to decide. I think in mid-March there's going to be a hearing about whether the government can actually use the route it has used to try and get the constitution changed. The whole idea of the popular route was for ordinary people to go. The government is supposed to go through parliament. So whether it can actually utilize this route is actually a case that's going to be in court. And there's a real possibility we are not even actually going to have a referendum if the whole process is found to be
Patrick, we seem to have lost Patrick. Okay, Patrick. So Patrick, here's the other thing, is that you have a constitution that came into place in 2010. And already now you're seeing politicians are saying that, hey, listen, we're not happy with this constitution, so the constitution needs to change. Which then brings about the question that, is the problem really the constitution, or is it more about the political leaders? Because then you ask the question about bringing in a prime minister whom under the previous constitution or the current constitution, you said that position should be done away with.
Yes, BBI is about basically recreating what was known as a Grand Coalition government, which was the government that was set up after the 2008 violence. That government was the one that had a prime minister. And it was known as a Nusum Kate government, basically half a loaf, in the idea that there were two opposing parties that were sharing power, and nobody really liked it. By the end of 2013, by the end of 2012, and by March 2013, when we went to elections, people are fed up. And one of the things that Kenyatta promised and Odinga promised in the 2017 elections was that they would not have that sort of government. They would not go into a coalition where they shared power. And it seems now that that's being introduced and reshaped using the Constitution and introducing into the Constitution the things that we had rejected, that we had passed off in 2010. Yep. So I think that again, this has very little to do with what's in the interests of the country. These are people who are playing short-term politics. Yeah. They're looking at what's in their short-term advantage. And unfortunately, they're using the Constitution, which is meant to be for all of us, to sort out their own personal beefs.
Patrick, if you make that argument, Patrick, that this has nothing to do with the people of Kenya, how then do you back that up when the IEBC is saying that we got the 1 million signatures, although, of course, that is also up for dispute?
Yes, as you say, it is disputed. And also, I mean, getting 1 million signatures, pretty much these guys can do it by mobilizing their own cronies. But if you look at the arguments being made, that's where I have a problem with. I mean, the first thing is to remember that 2010 Constitution has not actually been implemented, in full. So the people who are telling us that it needs to be changed when they haven't actually implemented it, there's a problem there. How do we even know they're going to implement what they changed? And then the issues that they are pointing out are not necessarily constitutional issues. When you talk about what is guaranteed to the counties, there's nothing in the Constitution, the current Constitution, that stops the government giving the counties 45 and 60% or 90% of its revenue if it wants to. And the fact is the counties have been getting above the 15% that is the guarantee. So it's a really strange argument to say that this is the reason to do it. Reintroducing the prime ministership again. What's the argument for it? We've been there. We rejected it. Why are we going back? So I don't see that this is something that is geared towards solving our problems. It is really geared towards fixing our politicians' problems. One last thing. After the 2007-2008 violence, we actually sat down as a country and we had what was called an agenda for process, where we formed a set of commissions to go around the country to investigate our history and come up with recommendations for fixing our problems, such as with elections, etc. Those commissions and their recommendations have been ignored. And what the PBI is doing is replacing them. Is saying that Kenyatta and Odinga can pick out the 9 issues they want and propose those to be the problems, rather than going back to what we had actually identified as a country and fixing those and implementing that. So I think it's really important to remember that this is actually a capture of a process of reform, that they are replacing what was nationally known to be the way forward, identified as an articulation of our problems, with their own formulation, which comes with their 9-point agenda.
Okay, let's just quickly go to an ad break. When we come back, we continue the conversation looking at the political developments that are underway in Kenya as the country is set to go for a referendum later on this year. But as Patrick has indicated, there's also a chance that could be contested in March. There's also one lawyer who has said that he's contesting the declaration from the IEBC that the counties are supporting, or rather that they've received the 1 million signatures, although he argues that those 1 million signatures have not been verified.